Guys, so today for this little tutorial, I'm going to show paper space or layouts in Rhino, how to quickly kind of set some up for your project. I'm assuming here you guys have already seen or looked at my, you know, setting up the save as template, because I'm going to be using the one I created for that, which is my kind of intro, getting into a project, has some basic lines. The important one here is the no print that we'll use. But just to show very briefly the kind of utility of why we're even doing this. So I'm going to go to, this is my project that I'm working on at the moment. And you can see, yes, I have the kind of the size of the paper kind of scaled up to where I'm going to be printing these. And of course I could do a print and then, where is it? Oh, it's not, here we go. Let me try that again. There, wait, weird. Oh, here we go. I could, of course, print this way. So set my scale, drag it around my thing, around my kind of frame, incrementally go down and do each of these this way. But that whole kind of activity, obviously that takes time just to do these one at a time. But the other thing is, like, as these buildings get more complex and perhaps you have your RCP on top of your plan to kind of save you having to do line work, or to change line work in multiple places, that process begins to take a lot longer later into a project. You may have to toggle on different materials for certain drawings. It can be really time consuming. The advantage of having stuff set up as layouts, which is what I've already done this here. So here we're in kind of the model space where if I was to measure something, distance, that's 3, 2. So that's the actual distance as I kind of found of that wall in the building in the real world. And so layouts work a little bit different. Layouts are kind of scaled to the size of the paper. So here, when we see this black background, that is my assigned background for model space. Here I'm going to just double click into one of these drawings. You can see the size of this is 17 by 11. And here where we see the gray, that's indicating to us that this is paper world. So now if I was to measure that same wall thickness, it's the actual size of the paper. I'll get into kind of how these interface with one another. Like, you can have certain things on, like my text in this case is on my kind of paper layer, and you can also double click in and be modifying, the line work. Like, I could add stuff in my kind of model layer, which is a helpful trick. We'll get into that stuff in a moment, but just to really kind of show the utility of this, like why you should care about this, is so yeah, rather than having to go kind of individually and drag the window around each of our drawings, when have our layouts set up already in layouts or in paper space, that process looks like this to print all the drawings. Print, and then you go out to layouts, you do multiple layouts, and you just kind of list as many as you want to do. So you can print some of them or all of them, and I'm gonna do all of them. I hit print. Takes a second because my computer's ancient, but just to show you guys, I'm just going to put it here just to show test, just to kind of prove to you guys how quick this is. Okay, it's going to take a couple of seconds just because we have multiple drawings, but this is not like, this is where you sip your coffee and hang out. You're not having to actually be executing commands, not really having to think or work. I probably should have started a clock just for fun, but let's see, what was that? It was maybe, what, about 30 seconds, perhaps. It just opened it up automatically. And here are all of our drawings. Wow, cool. That is hugely useful because it just takes a lot of work off your plate during production, but also, you know, allows you to have these kind of incremental check-ins. So you can do that in like a matter of seconds. I'm gonna bring this up to 100 and, you know, use this as a trick for yourself. Like for instance here, I'm like, ooh, like the cut line that's being doubled here looks, maybe I need to delete one of those layers because it's really kind of jumping out more than I want, you know. This is incomplete, but obviously that needs some work. Maybe I need, you know, to have the material that's kind of within the cut line represented as a different line type. It allows you to kind of make decisions about line weighting or composition, all kinds of things in the kind of format that it's going to be displayed in. So here it's like, oh yeah, I mean, all of these need work, you know, but it's just so fast. It's great. So now I'm going to just show you guys how to set that up. You'll see here I have each of these, I have kind of the frame set around each of it's around the same scale as my kind of no print reference in the model space, but it's kind of locked. Even if I go into the model space here, it's locked, which I'll show you how to do. But for this, because I've already set this up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go, this is just, I have opened a save as template raw. So again, if you wanna see how to do that, look at the other tutorial. But yeah, I'm just gonna, so here are the steps. So start with the no print layer. It's okay, like we don't even have line work here, but, or you know what, sorry, actually I'm just gonna give us a little box. So we're gonna do a rectangle. I'm just gonna do this approximately what that kebab project is, just so we have something to kind of have a reference around. Okay, so this is our project, that's our plan, say. And I'm gonna do another one, it's over here actually. I'm gonna do another one, so pretend that's the plan, and then I'm gonna do another one that's like approximately the elevation. It's, you know, this is not the exact proportion, but just so you guys can, wait, rectangle, here's our door. Obviously this is very inexact, but, and we'll put this on a, or actually let's do this the right way. We're gonna match face, and we'll match it to that layer. And match this to the, oh, the color here is a little, this is actually the cut line. Okay, whatever. There we go, close enough. Just to have some geometry to start with. So now, so I'm assuming that you guys like had that to start, but if not, you know, you could set this up raw if you have a general idea of how big your project is. But okay, so we know that our format for this assignment is 11 by 17. So I'm in the no print layer, that kind of reference layer. And because we're in model space, you know, this is 1:1. This is what, 35 feet is what I made it. So now we're gonna draw the paper that we need to that we're gonna be eventually printing at exactly a 1:1 scale. So that's 17 inches, enter by 11 inches. Great, here's our paper. We're gonna multiply this by 12. So scale, and then 12. And then here is where it kind of requires, you know, a bit of a guess, or a bit of, not a guess exactly, but a little bit of thinking here. Where here, if we were to, you know, print just this section of the building on an 11 by 17 piece of paper like this, then 1 inch in the drawing would equal 1 foot in kind of the model space or in the real world. And obviously that doesn't grab our whole building. If we were, say, doing a chair or something, maybe that would be the right scale. But here we know we have to go a little bit bigger. When you're working in Imperial, the way I like to think about it, I always multiply it by 12 off the bat. So it's kind of 1 inch to 1 foot. And then whatever you multiply it, kind of scale it by next, is the denominator of your scale. So some common ones, these are round numbers. This is like a common one. The two that I'm like, I don't know exactly which it will be. I think this is either going to be 1/4 scale, so multiplying this by 4, because I'm just like, ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or the other one I think that could work here is by 8, so 1/8 inch scale. Let's just try 1/4 inch scale. So multiply this by 4. What do we think? It's a little tight, but I think for the purposes of this, let's make sure it looks okay on the elevation. It's a little tight, but just because, we may have notation or other things. Like this is the full kind of print. We don't want it right up against the edge. But for our purposes here, I think that will work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to center this over our geometry. It's a little tricky. There we go. And then I'm going to, just for kind of cleanliness and coherence, I'm going to, rather than kind of bring this box down and center it over the random spot I put my other geometry, I'm going to do this in a kind of more deliberate way. I'm going to go take the gumball, go -10 feet. I'm going to go a little bit more in case I want to increase my scale. So let's have them, I'm going to do another -15 feet. So they're all 25 feet apart, like this. And then I'm going to kind of bring my geometry up and centered to kind of align with that. So let's see, middle, so it's centered in this line, and now I'm going to center that on the paper. Great. So these now also, just for your own sake, these are kind of aligned here, which is just, not kind of exactly required, but it's just, that's the kind of like modeling, drawing hygiene I like to have in things. It makes everything easier. Okay, so great. We have this kind of set up in model space. I think we can, even though we only have these, we're only going to kind of set up these 2 layouts now. I'm just going to bring down a couple of other ones. So say we want, because we're going to have other elevations, we'll have other sections. I'm just going to bring down a few more here, not to have to do them, but just to kind of convey the idea that we could have more of these. And say it's, here's our plan. Here's 1 elevation, 2 elevation, 3 elevation, 4 elevation. Actually, if we're being really smart about this, we'd probably just do the elevations here. And if there's a section, you can align it actually in this axis. Oh, wait. So this is how I do it. But so here, we'll put our sections here. Just flipping back to this one real quick, just to kind of explain why I'm doing this. So plan, elevation, 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 and then the section that is looking kind of in the same direction as this elevation, I have next to it here, because when I kind of initially create this drawing, I can just pull the line work across. And it also just kind of quickly, it orients you to where you are in the drawing without having to constantly be using those titles and kind of getting around that way. So that's just like how I do things. But okay, so let's do this first one. So again, we're in model space. We have the black background. Great, great, great. Up here, what we're going to do is we're going to go so I went to the layout tab. You may have to bring this down by doing the panels, layouts, and you bring it over. Layouts is one that it's similar to properties, layers, and display, where me personally, I always like to have that on my kind of board, just because I am very frequently using that. Maybe less so with 3D, but when I have drawings in 2D, I basically always have layouts open. So we're gonna go new layout. Oh, yes, okay. Okay, let me just show this, and then there's one other thing we need to troubleshoot, but we're just gonna call this plan, right? We're gonna go landscape, fine. Oh, ledger, 11 by 17, I believe is ledger. So this looks good. The one kind of thing to jump out here is that this is in millimeters and we actually want to be in inches. So you can change it there, great. I'm gonna click OK. But I find that, this is the correct size, but I will say this, we're not really, I think in inches when I'm working in the US. And so this is something that I should have kind of pre-done on my save as template, but I'll just show you that step right now. So I'm trying to change the units here to inches. And the reason that makes sense is just, we have our model in Imperial, and so you don't want to have to kind of be thinking in multiple formats. Be like, oh, this is in millimeters, but then if I go in here, that's in feet and inches. Like, just save yourself the headache. So the way to do that, units. And so if you remember, our model units we set to feet and inches when we did the setup of the save as template, but the layout, which what I keep calling paper space, has its own units. And so here, rather than setting it as feet like we did with the larger model, I'm going to set it as inches. It's kind of a better scale to the scale of the paper. Basically, it's closer. And so so just do inches here. That's fine. We're going to do decimal fractional. And let's go display precision. We'll go to 32nd. And okay. And now, yes. So top. Let's go layouts. Yep. And I guess I had to double click into that, but you'll notice that the units listed just changed. Okay. Great. So we have our first one, but like, oh my God, this is not like anywhere near where we want to be. Couple things to identify here just right off the bat. One of them is, as I kind of noted before, the black is kind of paper space, model space when we double click into this. And when we see this kind of gray, that's when we're kind of in this paper layer. And so each of them, is at a different scale. So this is this, when we measure this, it's as if we're just looking at the piece of paper on the screen. But when we look at this, we've kind of dropped into that model view, and we're looking at the full building scaled with no, like 1 foot equals 1 foot. So you'll notice there's this annoying, it scrolls in and scrolls out when I am in the model space, which is, I guess, useful for editing lines, similar to how we are in model space, but we want to set this to a precise scale that is locked. So I'm going to show you first off how to kind of get this where you want it. And have it stay there. And so I'm double clicking out of this model space, and you'll notice when we were in model space, actually, there is this kind of frame here. It's black on the inside, it's gray paper on the outside. When I double click out of this, I'm all in the paper. I can click on this. And so this is kind of the viewport that we're looking through. So the first step in my kind of process of how to set these up, we're going to drag these to the corners, meaning the viewport is going to be exactly 17 inches by 11 inches, so exactly the size of the paper. Next, we're going to go into the model space by double clicking. We're going to click on the reference boxes that we've created, which are, the size of the paper but scaled up to what we want them to be. And then I'm going to do, the command is zoom selected. I have it as ZSA as an alias. You guys might have it differently. You can also get there by just going zoom, and then you do the kind of sub command of S, enter, and that's basically, it zooms it to whatever you have selected. It's a pretty intuitive one. But so now if we go to properties, or sorry, display, wait, where is the, sorry. Oh wait, okay, so if we go to, we were here, and then we double click to get into paper space, and I'm clicking, so this I can't select because this is just the reference line for the paper in my model space. But remember, we dragged the viewport out here. It's also cyan, which is maybe a little confusing, and you could adjust if you wanted to, but whatever. Here I'm in properties for the viewport. The detail view is what it's called here. And so you'll notice this is close to that 1 to 4 that we had, but it's not exactly there because of the way that zoom selected works. We know the way that command works is it exactly centers it on your screen, but it doesn't go exactly to the extent. And so what I'm going to do here is I will delete this, so it's just exactly 1 inch to 1 foot, i.e. 1 foot equals a 1/4 inch on the paper. Hit enter, and then I hit lock. That is the process. And so now what is great about that is, okay, here this is exactly to the scale it should be. When I print it, this will be the same as printing printing using the window selection tool. But when I go in here, I can zoom in and out, and it zooms on the paper rather than, changing the location of the line work and changing the scale. So what's cool about that is now here I could, make annotations if I want in that layer, in that paper space kind of layer. But I can also be in here and actually be making direct manipulations to the line work. Great, maybe there's let's call it 4 feet. I'm just kind of doing very random or not precise stuff here, but this, we want this to be on the cut layer, and we want, let's go split, and we want these to be on the mid layer, say, or maybe this is the heavy layer because it's the outside, whatever. So we can make changes to the geometry, kind of thinking in this like plan view, but then if we go back to our full model space view, those changes are also happening here. And so once you have these paper spaces set up, that's really how I'm working. You're like working on and thinking about the format that the drawing will be eventually, exported, submitted in, which I think is like a helpful, it's a good way of framing. You're not spending time on random stuff that is not even going to be featured in the drawing. It just kind of is a good kind of focus trick. Great. Okay, so next thing we're going to do here is we're going to say we want the next one for elevation. I'm going to show you how to do that. We're just going to do copy layout. I'm going to change this name to elevation. Let's just call it elevation A because I don't want to spend time finding out the cardinal directions right now. But you'll notice that that's still at that 17 inches by 11 inches. But looking at this, see, we're in elevation A right now. You can see down here at the bottom that the tab is kind of elevation A, not that plan, even though it looks the same. But so we now want to align this with the kind of next reference down in our model space. How do we do that? So we're back to paper space where we have that detail view by double clicking, or like paper world with the gray. We click on that, properties, and so remember this is locked, so we can't kind of change what is shown here. So we're going to unlock that, then double click in here, zoom out so that we can kind of grab the reference for our next drawing down, and we're going to do that same ZSA. Double click into paper space. Remember, this is the reference in the model space, but this is our kind of our view, detail view, which we kind of drag to the corner. Oh, I shouldn't have done that there. Great. So click on that, and same thing. We're kind of bringing this to quarter scale, and then we're locking it. Wow, cool. And so now, we can click between these. I can be in here working on, working on the line work in here the same way that I was in my plan. And that's kind of the same process repeated for all the other ones. One additional thing to kind of flag here for you guys is that I'll kind of I'll have you guys recall when we set up the save as template, I noted that there were these different colors. So there's the color for the model space. So if I was to change, say, I'm actually going to do this because I prefer to have my cut line as red, and this is purple. If I change that when I'm in the model view, when I'm like kind of seeing the black background, that will change, right? I can toggle on or off visibility the same way that I do with the model. But the color in model space, which I have as these crazy colors to just identify easily what are different line types, is different than the kind of print width color or the print color or the print width, which here I have it, these are black lines that of various line widths. And so one thing I think can be helpful is you can kind of change the setting. So you can change over here, you can change the visibility of certain layers. You have to be in here. But so I could toggle, say I'm like, oh, I actually don't want the ground plane in this image. For this drawing, if I double click into that model view, I can turn off the visibility of the ground plane so that when I print it, it will just be printed like this. But when I go back to my top view, the ground plane is still in there. So you can kind of selectively turn off or on layers in the model view of each layout and not have it affect either, if we look at this plan, that red cut layer is still shown here. But this is immensely useful for kind of having different layouts show different things. So maybe you have a very dense plan that has, electrical and, or even just diagram layers. Like you can show those off, selectively show or hide those in different layouts, but they, you don't have to kind of, if you were doing that same exercise from, just printing from model space, you would have to go through and, toggle on and off all those layers. But you can kind of have that, whatever settings you want to do for visibility, kind of permanently, or permanently kind of attached to each layout, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a weird concept, so come talk to me if you're struggling with this. It's also worth noting that to change that kind of visibility, you have to be in the model view. Like, you have to have the black background, if that makes sense. And another kind of trick that I find helpful is, what I will do here often is I will do print display state on. And so when this is kind of like a trick. It gives me like a little, obviously with Rhino, the seeing what line weight will actually look like is not the best. Like, if I zoom out to here, I don't see any line weight. If I zoom in to here, it kind of changes. But I find helpful to have this on in this kind of paper view, because it's closer to what I'm going to be looking at when it's printed. Still, of course, print to PDF as like the real test, but when I double click in, it still is kind of back to that bright color understanding of it all for line weighting. But it also just like helps me remember, really, oh, I'm looking at paper view, here I'm looking at model view. But yeah, that is all I got for this one. But yeah, give it a shot. See how it works for you guys. All right, thanks.